Dear fellow Rotarians, thank you for this opportunity to give a history moment in November in honor of American Thanksgiving and Native American Heritage Month. Given the many myths around this American holiday, I'd like to share a brief true history of Thanksgiving. Most Americans associate the first Thanksgiving with dour English pilgrim settlers who had recently landed in Plymouth Colony in what is now Massachusetts. They shared a 3-day autumnal celebration with the local indigenous Wampanoag people in 1621. However, hosting community days of Thanksgiving featuring feasting, entertainment, and religious rites was a long-held tradition among both Europeans and Native Americans, such as the Green Corn Dance of the Cherokees. And the British New England colonists weren't even the first Europeans to hold Thanksgiving in North America. Possibly the first European Thanksgiving service on this continent was hosted by Spanish colonists in what is now Florida. According to the National Park Service, on September 8, 1565, Pedro Menendez de Avalos and 800 Spanish settlers founded the city of St. Augustine in Spanish Florida. As soon as they came ashore, the landing party celebrated a mass of Thanksgiving. Afterward, Menendez laid out a meal to which he invited as guests the native Saloy tribe who occupied the site. Another European Thanksgiving on record occurred a decade later, on May 27, 1578, when English explorer Martin Frobisher and about 400 men finally landed safely in what is now Newfoundland, Canada, in their quest to find the Northwest Passage. For British New England, some historians believe that Popham Colony, in what is now Maine, conducted a Thanksgiving service in 1607. The colony was abandoned a year later and has been overlooked as a predecessor to Plymouth. Also in 1607, Jamestown, Virginia colonists gave thanks for their safe arrival, and another service 3 years later was held when a supply ship arrived after a harsh winter. Other early Virginia colonists, the Berkeley Hundred settlers, held a Thanksgiving service in accordance with their charter, which stated that the day of their arrival in 1619, quote, shall be yearly and perpetually kept holy as a day of thanksgiving to Almighty God, unquote. Sadly, all of the settlers of Berkeley 100 were killed during an Indian massacre 3 years later. Not surprisingly, European colonists and indigenous people have shared a fraught history from the earliest days of interaction on Native American lands. While many Americans today probably envision the Plymouth Pilgrims holding a somber, religious-focused Thanksgiving in 1621, this is far from the truth. The Pilgrims actually rejected the idea of public religious displays. Not only did they host a non-religious Thanksgiving feast, aside from saying grace, records also indicate they spent 3 days with their Wampanoag visitors, feasting, playing games, and yes, drinking beer. Sound familiar? So, festivals of Thanksgiving, usually autumnal harvest celebrations, continue to be observed sporadically in communities across the British colonies for more than 150 years. Then in 1789, Elias Boudinot of Massachusetts, a member of the House of Representatives, proposed to Congress that the new nation of the United States should hold an official, quote, day of public thanksgiving and prayer, to be observed by acknowledging with grateful hearts the many signal favors of Almighty God, especially by affording them an opportunity peaceably to establish a form of government for their safety and happiness, unquote. On October 3rd, 1789, President George Washington proclaimed a National Day of Thanksgiving on Thursday, November 26th. Subsequent presidents proclaimed occasional Thanksgivings during their terms of office, either on their own initiative or at the request of Congress. One exception was President Thomas Jefferson, who believed it was a conflict of church and state to require the American people to hold a day of prayer and thanksgiving. President James Madison proclaimed a day of Thanksgiving to be held on April 13, 1815, the last such proclamation issued by a president until Abraham Lincoln did so during the American Civil War. Credit for the establishment of an annual Thanksgiving holiday often goes to Sarah Josepha Hale, the so-called godmother of Thanksgiving. Starting in 1827, in her influential role as the editor of Ladies' Magazine and Godey's Ladies' Book, she began printing articles, stories, and recipes about Thanksgiving, and wrote scores of letters to governors, senators, and presidents urging them to make it a national holiday. Finally, on October 3rd, 1863, buoyed by the victory at Gettysburg of the Union, President Lincoln proclaimed that November 26th would be a National Thanksgiving Day to be observed every year on the fourth Thursday of November. To give merchants more selling days before Christmas, President Franklin D. Roosevelt tinkered with the schedule and assigned the third Thursday to be Thanksgiving Day in 1939 and 1940. But he was met with popular resistance, largely because the change required rescheduling Thanksgiving Day events such as football games and parades. Yes, these have been traditions on Thanksgiving for at least 100 years. In 1941, a congressional joint resolution officially set the fourth Thursday of November as a national holiday for Thanksgiving. And 81 years later and counting, that tradition continues. So to wrap up, I would like to share a brief secular expression of Thanksgiving that I found without clear authorship, but it goes like this, quote, "As we come together at this special time, let us pause a moment to appreciate the opportunity for good company and to thank all those present and past whose efforts have made this event possible. We reap the fruits of our society, our country, and our civilization, and take joy in the bounties of nature on this happy occasion. Let us also wish that someday all people on earth may enjoy the same good fortune that we share," unquote. With that, I wish all of you a happy Thanksgiving and a safe, happy, and healthy holiday season. Thank you.